so that we respect everyone's time. We're going to get started. So good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. So my name is Abby Bejo, and today I am representing the newly formed St. Kitts and Nevis Non-Communicable Disease Alliance. So good afternoon. And the Non-Communicable Disease Alliance, we're aiming to form a coalition of NGOs right here in St. Kitts and Nevis working to tackle NCDs. So one of the important areas of the work that we've been doing with this alliance is to build the capacity of NGOs and thus assist NGOs to develop the key skills they need for success. And so today we're really delighted to be here today to welcome you and to offer this webinar on grant readiness. We're delighted to have NGOs and private sector organizations joining us from St. Kitts and Nevis and also from across the Caribbean. So you're all very, 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 very welcome. So we thank you so much for joining. So today we're focusing on grant readiness to build our capacity to successfully complete grant applications, which can be a very challenging task. And we're focusing today particularly on explaining the grant proposal elements and then clearing up any confusion on what should or shouldn't be included in grant applications. So as we go through the session today, please feel free to put your questions and comments in the chat box, and then we'll get to them during the Q&A, which will be at the end of Mr. Stapleton's presentation. So today our speaker is Mr. Stapleton, who's very kindly agreed to come back and deliver another grant readiness session. So this is the second webinar that he's delivered for us. And if you didn't attend the first session, if you send us an email, we can send you a recording of that session. So we're very happy to have him with us today. He's very experienced. And I'm now going to hand over to Ezra Nicholas, who's our project consultant for the St. Kitts and Nevis NCD Alliance, and she's going to introduce Mr. Stapleton. So over to you, Ezra.
Thank you, Abby. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much. And as we introduce Mr. Leonard Stapleton, our speaker, Mr. Stapleton is an IWCAM/GEF certified professional trainer of trainers, proposal writer. He has trained and assisted several government departments, community groups, and NGOs in proposal writing through the Ministry of Social Development. Through the GEF Small Grants Program, trained PTAs of schools in Nevis as well as stakeholder hotels and tourism association in proposal writing, written proposals, and successfully attained funding for the St. Christopher National Trust to help in historic sites restoration and other heritage work. He is an educator, author, accountant, and heritage and cultural consultant. Some of his publications include Places of Memory, the experiences and the contributions of the enslaved Africans on St. Kitts and Nevis, a local history book adopted by the Ministry of Education for use in all primary schools. Spectacular Views, a travel guide magazine for St. Kitts and Nevis, the Brimstone Hill Fortress National Park Visitor's Guide, the Brimstone Hill Fortress National Park Special Edition for HRH Prince Charles, and presented to HRH on his 2019 visit to St. Kitts and Nevis, government official brochure, and created. So in this case, in this regard, we'd like to welcome Mr. Stapleton to do our presentation. Thank you.
Over to me?
Yes.
Thank you as well. Good afternoon, everyone. All right, so I'll just jump straight into it.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon and welcome.
All right, so this afternoon, we're going to just look at the bare bones of the proposal. And these are the narrative elements. These are the ones that normally have people stuck with their pen in their hands for several weeks. Mostly because some of the terms are abstract to them. As a matter of fact, one part of the element, the first part, is called the abstract. And some people sometimes don't know exactly what to write there. And the funny thing about the abstract, the executive summary, which is really a nicer word, but it's still an abstract word, is that it kind of asks for similar things that you may have, right? So you have the feeling that you're duplicating things. And that's how we really supposed to be. As we go further into it, you'll notice. One of the other thing that you need to write is the statement of need. Now, you'll need to know these things because sometimes there are proposals that don't give you a breakdown of what to write, the different sections. So sometimes you need to know the different sections of proposal. So you have the executive summary or the abstract, then you have the statement of need, and this is where you're going to put the purpose and your objectives. You're going to put who or what going to benefit from the project that you're looking funding for. Also, the credentials and the background and history of your organization. These days, there are some grant agencies that are actually requiring that you show some proof that you have done some sort of work or some project, no matter how small. They want to see evidence that you have done something and this is not your first project. Some of them want to see that you have been in existence for more than a year. Okay, because what they realize is in the past, many persons qualify for their grant and they lack the experience and the see it throughness to complete the project. And so right now, as we do this here, there are some organizations that have gotten funding last year, 2 years ago, some even 10 years ago, for projects that should be completed in 3 months, and they have not completed the project. And so one thing with these funding agencies is that they too get funding from other agencies, and they have to give an account for the funds they get from these umbrella agencies. And that is why it's imperative sometimes when they ask you for a report, because they need your report to make their own report. And so they check your background to see if your organization and the people within there are capable and have experience in doing a project. Next, they want to see what you're going to do, the different things you're going to do to get the project done. So your approach or the method that you're going to use. And then they want you to also put how you're going to evaluate how successful the different activities and the outcome that you propose would be. There's a timeline because you want to give them a whole scope of work, and you must have a timeline. Most of the time, they also will let you know that they want the project to be finished within 3 months, a year, or whatever. But you still need to let them know how long your project would be. So even if they're asking for 3 months, it to be done in 3 months, you may be able to get it done in 1 month. So you still have to put your timeline. And of course, the budget. And this is critical. This is the one that gets people in a lot of trouble. The project budget, and this is where you have to do your research and get estimates and so forth to put a rough figure, because you're just proposing now. When you do the budget though, you need to get assurances from whoever giving you the estimates that this is the price they're quoting, that's the price you're gonna get it for. Even after, because these days with inflation, you have the prices of items changing very fast and going up. So you need to get assurances so that when you do now get the funding, because there will be a delay between when you write the proposal and submit it and when it get approved, and also a delay between when you get approved and when you get the funding. During that time, the price of items that you have in your budget could change. And so you have to make allowances for that and put things in place that people give you a little guarantee in writing that this is a project you're going to be doing, you're not going to get the funding now, and so you want the prices to be at that stated amount. Otherwise, you're going to think. So a lot of those people who took the money 10 years ago and haven't completed their project, they're in real problems because the prices 10 years ago look different to prices now. All right, so let's go into what they call the abstract. What I did, I break down the different items that you must put in a suitable abstract or executive summary, and I put it in question form so that you just answer the questions. And then when you're finished answering all of these questions I'm going to put here, you should have information for your executive summary. So one of the first things you want to put down is what you're going to accomplish with your project. What is your project going to accomplish? And you could state it in general terms. It could be you want to solve the issue of water shortage in your community. You want to educate people about climate change. You want to get elderly people more active, so you want to improve the awareness in terms of non-communicable diseases. It could be different things that you want to accomplish. So you put that down. Then you come to the specific problem you are addressing. So let's say you want to educate them about the impact of climate change. The problem you're probably addressing is the fact that many persons in the community that you are doing the project in are not aware of the different impact of climate change and how it's affecting their lives, And so you see people going about their business oblivious to the fact that the world is changing and they need to be educated so they can change their behavior. So you put the problem there. The next thing you want to know is, why is the project important? Okay. Now this is where you could pull evidence. Maybe you could even speak to one or two persons in the community to get a little feedback that you can quote here. Let's say you're doing a project on the need for renewable energy. And so why is that important? The high cost of fossil fuel and the carbon footprint that it leaves is having a great impact on the community. And so your project, in terms of getting people educated and getting your organization equipped with solar panels, that could make your organization be something like an example, or it could be something that directly make your organization more carbon friendly and reduces the cost of running your organization and where electricity is concerned, and you can now use that money that you save to do other things. And so you put different things to show why your project is important. And then who or what would benefit? You would want to now identify the people or the community. And here you would put a number along with the people that would benefit. It could just be maybe an area that's under threat. Maybe people dumping garbage in a particular area, and that area needs rescuing. Maybe it's a particular historical site. So the site would benefit, and the people, not just the people in the community, because some of these things are beneficial even to visitors. So you could get an idea of the number and from the tourist bureau or whatever, that go around the island and visit historical sites, and those would be included. So it would make your project even more, have more gravity, because it's a lot of people that are going to be impacted with your project. How does the proposal relate to the funder's request for proposal? This is where you want to match your objectives in your project to what the funders want their money to be spent on. For instance, you have a funding agency that's doing a lot of work in the Caribbean islands, and that's the Global Environment Facility, that's GEF. And their main objective is to promote sustainability in terms of the environment and so forth. And so even if you are a church, for instance, and you are looking for solar panels, water storage facilities, you want to do an agricultural project, or you want a set of computers, you may even want an organ for your church. When you write your proposal, you cannot say that your project is to get an organ, because an organ has nothing to do with the environmental objectives of that particular funder. But if you say you're going to do concert to raise awareness through music about the environment and the problems and so forth, and one of the tools you need to do it, musical instruments like an organ, you can do that, because you will now be addressing the objective. Okay, so you can't say we need an organ because the church organ break down and we need one for the church. You must relate your objectives for your project to the objectives of the funder, because you're basically, when they give you the funds, is when they're satisfied that you are like an arm of the institution. You're like an associate. And so your objectives must mimic their objectives. So your project must mimic theirs. As we go more in depth in the other sections, you can see now you could ask any funder for anything. It's just that you have to show them the things that you're asking them for is to complete their objectives. When the project is finished, you can now use the items for your personal objective now, the personal objective of your organization. But none of that personal objective, unless it happened to be the same thing, must reach in there. Okay? How will the benefits and results be measured? You must bear in mind that there's a report to be given, and you will be stating the number of persons that would benefit. If you say 100 persons going to benefit from your project, then at the end, you got to really say how close you got to the 100. It might be less, it might be exactly 100, it might even be more than the 100. And you would have to look at the activities that you're going to do. For instance, you may do a workshop, and in this workshop, you're going to be training 100 people in your community how to do a backyard garden, for instance. You have to show them how you're going to measure to see whether or not that is effective. So you got different ways. You could look and see how many persons came to see if you actually got 100. So that now is where you're going to do practical things like maybe having them register or sign a name as they come. You're also going to see how many persons actually planted something after the time period they said they're going to do it. And so you could take photos. So these are different practical things you could show how you're going to measure your results. How will it be self-sustaining? There are some funders, it's not all of them, want to see an element that after the funding cease, that your project would continue. So sometimes it's good to incorporate something inside here. Like if you're going to be doing even a fundraising concert to raise awareness, you could put it so that it would be an annual fundraising concert. So that after you get the funding to put on the initial concert, to pay for all the equipment you need, the costumes and so forth, you put something in it to show that the next year you're going to be doing it again. Okay? It's not, as I said, it's not all. Now, you'd notice, in order to write this project summary, or the executive summary or the abstract, you would have already had to put a lot of thought into the entire project. However, the recommendation is that you do this section last. And you're going to see why. Because you're going to do the statement of need. And the first thing they're asking you in the statement of need are the same goals and objectives that you're going to put in the abstract. And that is why they call it an abstract or an executive summary. Because what you're really doing in the abstract or the executive summary is summarizing all the other elements. The statement of need, budget, and all them different things there. You get a summary of each one and you put it. So it's easier if you want to get writing right away to leave the abstract, all them things here, for last, and then you extract a summary of each one from the different sections. And then you'll get your pen and your paper quicker. So you can now skip the abstract and go straight to writing the statement of need. And you're going to hear me now repeating a number of the things I just said before. And this is what get people kind of frightened and confused because they feel like they're not supposed to write the same thing more than once. But that's the nature of the writing process. So the statement of the goals and objectives, then the problem or the issue, just like what I explained before, you're going to let them know what project problem you are actually asking for the funding for. Okay, here now you're going to a little bit more details. You have to give some evidence as to why your proposal should be funded. Okay, similar to the question that was asked in the abstract. Why is your project important? So the compelling evidence, and I like the word evidence. So you don't just write what everybody know, that yes, hunger is a problem in some pockets of the community, or there's a need for security cameras because of some crime in this particular area. You now have to back that up with evidence. And you can get the evidence from newspaper clippings that show evidence of crime that took place in the area. Even ministers making statements that they're going to address the same particular issue. These things are published things, and even people's opinion. You could even go and interview 10 persons to get evidence that the problem that you're speaking about is there. It might even not even be so much of a problem. It might be something you want to be proactive about, to introduce. Something like you're probably seeing later down the line with the increase of food prices that people may have to be growing some of their own food. And so you want to get them involved in backyard gardening. And so now you show the evidence now of the rising thing, maybe even some other communities that have already started to do that. Communities don't have to exist on your island or in your country. It could be other places where this thing is happening because what has not happened here yet has already happened in some of those communities where some people just can't afford to buy their food. So they have to resort to growing their own food. You know, some people are in areas or countries where water shortage is at a critical level, and then now got to turn to desalination projects, actually installing water harvesting equipment on their homes, water storage equipment, and so forth. So your project could be something proactive. The problem ain't reached you yet, but it's a problem that's coming. And you get your evidence to back that up. Right now in St. Kitts, we're facing a water shortage problem, but it's a trend now because of climate change. And so we could basically try to avoid the hardship we're having here by personally putting on water harvesting equipment on our own homes. So a project can be had where vulnerable persons in the community, you do a project to assist them in getting those things, or even your own organization may need that. Include specific beneficiaries, the community or the target population. Again, this was mentioned before. All this comes into the statement of need. And this is really tick off people because they're realizing that they're writing the same thing. You have to write the same thing. It's just that you're going to go into a little bit more details here. Again, your organization background. And this now you're showing reasons why your organization and the staff and associates are qualified and capable of providing us the solution that you say you're doing with your project. And this is where now you give the little bio on the different, this is where you really come in handy. Sometimes based on the project you're doing is of a technical nature, and the persons within your organization may not be the ones qualified to do it. And this is where you have to maybe collaborate with different people to show and maybe get in writing from them that they're going to be assisting. Let's say you have something that is really technical, like setting up a computer lab or installing a set of solar panels, and nobody in your organization know how to do that. You now could collaborate with people in the community, and if it is that they donate their expertise for free, you don't just put free. You have to calculate how much it would actually cost if they had charged you. And that now would come down in the section for budget, because in the budget, you got to show now how much are the items you're going and services you're going to pay in cash, and how much you're going to get in kind, meaning the person not going to charge you. But you must put a dollar amount. So everything that you're going to get for free, whether it's goods and services, you still have to put the actual cost. It's best because sometimes some funders ask that a percentage of the funding be in kind. Okay, so you have to come up with that. Sometimes some people get the government to just give duty free and all this stuff, and that could take care of the in-kind section. But all those help that you're gonna get from different people, you put the cost of it, even if they're not charging you. Highlight the opportunity for your organization to contribute to the solution or improvement through the assistance and partnership with the funder and collaboration with other organizations. So this is what I'm talking about. You're going to be speaking as if you are like an associate of the funder, doing what you can with the funder's money to achieve the funder's objective. Even if you know in the back of your mind that after the project is done and the funder's objectives are achieved, that set of equipment that you really needed for something else now become yours. But for the sake of the project and the proposal that you're writing it like you're doing them. You're an associate of them, and you're helping them to achieve the objective. That is critical. So you're writing like as if you're a partner with them. And collaborating with other organizations is important in a lot of ways. Let's say you are a church group in a particular parish. I'm in St. Peter Parish. So a church group up here doing a project. There's nothing wrong with them collaborating with the church group down in St. George or over in St. Mary. That way now the number of persons that are going to benefit from that one project and the number of different expertise that would be in the pool of those three organizations would make it even more compelling to get the funding. All right, so let's look at the beneficiaries, and it could be a community, a specific community. It could be the entire country, because especially if it's an educational grant, where you need the money to spread the word about the funders issue, you now could use platforms that could reach the general public. Okay? If it's a historical site that you're trying to conserve, again, it's the entire general public plus the visitors. Something to help the environment, you now put the specific aspect of the environment that you're rescuing. It could be a beach where there's a lot of pollution. It could be a river. It could be a forest that being, a lot of the trees being chopped down or people dumping garbage inside there. That would be the beneficiary, the environment aspect, and also the people in the surrounding of that environmental area. It could be your particular NGO or organization that might benefit, just your organization alone. But as I said, it's best when you spread the benefit around. Because if you put your organization alone benefiting and you only have 10 people in your organization, that's not compelling. Another person seeking the same grant might put down, they have 1,000 people who's going to benefit. And even though you write your nice thing and everything is ticked off, you have all the requirements for your project, the person seeking the grant that says that their project going to benefit 1,000 persons, going to get more preference over the organization that said the project going to benefit 10 persons. And so it's always good to collaborate and to include as many persons in the beneficiary as possible. Notice the last one said the funder now would be a beneficiary because they would benefit because their objective. Okay, there are some funding agencies like UNESCO. They want to make sure that around the world, historical sites that has value, standing value and so forth to humankind, that they want to see conserved for the next generation, that they are protected. And so in you preserving a particular historical site that's threatened, it could be even your church. Your church could be a historical site, your school, your organization, and maybe the building you're in is one of them old buildings that need protecting. You could get funding because you will be helping UNESCO achieve their objective of preserving these things. It could be a set of records that you have in your organization, and you want these records in a safe place. You want them digitized. You could do a grant, write for a grant to get the equipment and the expertise to help you do that. Another element is the credentials and historical background of your organization. Notice that came up in the abstract, and it also was mentioned in the statement of need, right? A little bit. So now you still have to focus on it now. And what they want here is information to show, again, your ability to successfully undertake and complete the proposed project. You can do this in two ways. One of the ways I hinted on earlier I always encourage organizations to do little projects. It don't have to be big $10,000, $100,000 project. It could be a project that maybe even costs $100 to put on, maybe a $500 or whatever. But you do some projects in your community over the time that you are there to show that you have a track record of planning projects and executing projects. And so you'll have that note put in your proposal, that one of the evidence that we have to show you that we have the ability to undertake this project that we are proposing and asking for funding for is that we have done projects in the past successfully. It does not have to be the exact same project. It's just that you have experience already in doing a project. Now, if the organization don't have a lot of that, then now you have to look at the members in the organization. Some of them, maybe a lot of them, based on the composition of your organization, they have done projects already. Maybe not with that organization, but with other organizations. And then now when you look at their credential, their curriculum vitae, you could see evidence inside there that, at least on paper, they are qualified or certified to undertake some of the activities. If after all of that, your organization still falls short to show your ability to successfully undertake the project, then you definitely need to partner with another organization that got that track record and got the people. And then you share the funding, or some organization would allow you to piggyback on them and the funding come to you. I've seen that happen, where an organization go up front and get the funding, and a number of smaller organizations who by themselves would not have qualified now can get piece of the funding from this organization that put themselves forward. I've seen that happen. But what I'm trying to show you here, even when it looks bleak, if you think collaboratively and joining forces, what was once bleak would now become a real possibility. Again, it's asking you for your organizational history. This is thing that people keep all the time. If you're not keeping your records, now is the time now to start to really get down, document when your organization was formed, the different activities that you have done through the past and so forth. Get that thing properly and get registered also if you're not registered, because there are some funders that really require that you're registered. You need to put the curriculum vitae of the different people in the organization, especially those that you're going to put as the key people in the to complete the project. They need to see that. And if it is that you require to show that even though your organization is short-staffed or don't have the ability to successfully undertake the project with the number of persons, then this is where the support staff and the volunteers and so forth come in. Your approach, this is another word that normally turn off people. They just want to know how you're going to do this project here. So you put back down the project goals and objectives and so forth. And this time now you're going to extend it a bit more so that you can measure the objective. So if you just had before that you're going to help the people in the community of St. Peter, how are you going to measure that? You have to write that the project that you're doing going to benefit 150 persons, so that at the end you could measure it, right? After a 3-month period, so you got two things in there to measure now: the time and the number of persons. the methods now and the processes that you're going to use to meet the goals and objectives. So these now comes down to the different activities that you're going to do to undertake your project. So let's say you say you're going to do an educational awareness project. There are different things that you're going to do to bring awareness to the people. First, you got to get the information. That's one thing. You have to get the equipment. Could be from cameras, video cameras, maybe videographers if none exist in your organization, projectors, screens, and a place to rent, all those different things, because you're going to be putting on workshops and so forth. And so you're going to show you that the activities now that you say you're going to do to educate 150 people within 3 months, your activity is now showing that the activity is really matching and look like they can help achieve those objectives. You look at the intended scope of work. How many workshops are you going to do? How long, the duration of each workshop and so forth. All them different things they got to go in so that you could put details. So even though it looked like you're repeating something that you said before, you notice as you go along, they're asking for some more details. Then the expected outcomes. It's going to match the objectives a bit. All right? You say you're going to go and educate 150 people in the community of St. Mary about climate change, and you're going to do that over 3 months. Expected outcomes. One, you're going to have the workshops well attended. You're going to have the 150 people more aware. Also, you're going to have a series, and you can put a number of them, of workshops and so forth. So these are outcomes that after you finish the activities, you have these things done. You could even go further and say, maybe you want to see a change in behavior afterwards. So maybe before, or one of the objectives you might put that you want to see people after being made aware and educated, that they stop wasting water, they now try to conserve electricity, try to put in solar panels and so forth. Now you will have to check and see how many of these people intend to do it. The reason why I say intend is that the time, even if you can't, when you educate them, they really change. They plan to change. Planning to change and having the means to change are two different things. But you could measure how many of them intend to by doing an exit survey. So at least you could get some evidence on paper that the people are indicating that they plan to change their ways. The different activities, we went through some of them, the workshops, the actual doing of the gardens and so forth. Even the transportation of the people, the purchasing of equipment, all those are different activities that you have to put down to make the objectives come through. So you can't just say you're going to do a workshop and you're not putting down that one of the activities is going to be to actually secure a venue. Also, get the equipment, the necessary equipment. All these are different things because all the activities now would have a cost to it. And that is why you have to be careful to make sure you look at what you're doing and the different activities that you have to do to get the objectives, and then put a cost to each one. Also, you're going to describe the different people that are going to do the different things. So you're going to have a set of people who, well, most of the time you have one person who's the key contact person overseeing the whole thing, but then different segments of the scope of work is delegated to different people. Sometimes some organizations so small that one person do 2 things or 3 things, but it's good when different people could think. And what you want to do here in terms of the functions, more and more funders are asking that females be represented in the composition of the organization to start with. And also, when you look at the execution of the project, that they see evidence of inclusion and participation of the female gender. Now you come to the project timeline. Project timeline now, again, just like the budget, matches the activities, the different activities, the purchasing of the equipment, installation, doing the workshops, planting the garden and so forth. All these are different things that have their own time. And so sometimes it's good to do a particular chart. I think they call it a Gantt chart, where you could itemize the activities and you put the time in days or weeks based on how you're going to break it down. And let's say the purchasing is going to take 1 week, you shade that section. Oh, I think I may be able to show you a chart in this project here. You need to be able to see clearly how you plan to execute each activity and how long each should start. Because there's some things that can't happen unless another activity happen before it. For instance, you can't do the workshop unless you don't get the person to present, the equipment, the venue, the meals, like the snacks and so forth, and all those things ahead of time. Right? So the critical milestones in your project, for somebody doing something like a backyard garden project, you may want to be, as one of your milestone is when you actually get the participants together. That's very important. Sometimes you do a nice project and you don't have anybody to participate. I've seen people get, let's see, I think one time when there was an organization that got a grant for, I don't want to tell any lies, I think it's around 20 or 30,000 euros. And they had put that the beneficiaries would be, I think, 25 persons. And when the time comes, they got the funding, but normally when you get EU funding, they give you in tranches. You don't get all the money one time. And that was saved this organization. I think they got 10,000 up front. And eventually, when the time comes to execute, they only had 1 participant. Now, right away, that's a red flag. But the organization went through with the activities still. So even though they rented 25 chairs, paid for the rental for 25 chairs, paid for transportation for 25 children, paid for t-shirts, snacks, and so forth for 25 children, there was just 1 actual participant. Okay? And so that is why I say getting the involvement of your target population, that's a milestone. The other milestone is, could be, I'm just speaking general now, the different activities coming to a start and coming to a successful completion. Like if you're planting, you could take photos too, to show that, hey, the participants came to the training. Next milestone, the participants are engaged in the planting. Next milestone, the plants are actually growing. Next milestone, the people are harvesting. Okay. Then you have the project outcomes and then you put the date. This is simple. Once you have the outcome, you put the date, you could put an estimated date, but when you're doing the report, you have to put the actual date when the thing was done. Because there are times when what you propose in terms of time, money, and even some of the activities that change. Something that is not wrong, not a big problem, providing you would have communicated the change. For instance, that organization that ended up with one participant should have communicated immediately with the EU agency that at the present time they only have one participant. So they may need some extra time to get the rest 24 participants. Okay? So sometimes things change. You want to put now in your project timeline or your Gantt chart the different people that are going to do the different things right there also. So you get it complete. Different people involved in the planning, different people doing in the purchasing, different people going to be there in the workshop going on, and so forth. You look at the different activities that you're going to do. Okay? And based on the different activities you need to do to complete the project, you could determine whether or not the present staff you have in your organization could do it alone or you need help, and the different resources you need to do each part. Right? And so you have a list of things here, but you could add more stuff, more personnel. You have trainers, programmers if you're going to deal with computers and so forth. Different consultants. Consultants broad, it could be anything from somebody who you consult on planting lettuce, somebody you consult on installing a solar panel. Researchers and so forth, especially if you're dealing with restoration or conservation of a site or an area that you may want to make a protected area. For instance, I think the parish of St. Mary here in St. Kitts is declared a man on the biosphere area. So the whole area is protected and they get funding to keep the area like that. But of course, you would have to have people to do research in the community to see if the area deserves such a designation and to see exactly what's there in terms of environmental, cultural, and even the makeup of the people there. All that had to be done before. So that's where researchers will come in. And of course, these people need compensation. If they're not charging you, you still need to find out how much they would charge for such a service. And you note that and you put that as in kind. All right, so this is how the Gantt chart would look. So all them things I just said, you notice it now simplify if you have a chart like that, like this one here. This was something that was done to request funding to train some people. And so you have the first activity, introduction to grants, searching for requests for proposal. The second activity was training people to respond to the proposal request. The other one was training them how to manage the project and report. And then the fourth activity was actually creating a grant writing manual. And then you now have the different indication of success. You could have broken down the first activity into smaller tasks, but because the activity is simple as it is already, that was left blank. But based on your different activities, you can break it down into smaller parts so it's more achievable. Then you have the indicator of success. Most of the time, the indicator of success is some kind of evidence as to the outcome. And that is what you measure. Okay? For instance, if you look at activity 2, you say you're going to train them in terms of responding to proposals. How many of the worksheets and the checklist that the people in the training complete, and you could use that to show evidence that the people that did that activity actually did it. Pictures could be used to show success. And then you have the duration. So you notice activity 1 was done the first day, but the manual started that day also. The manual extended for 4 days. It was being done over time because the participants were actually helping to do the manual. And then on the second day, the second activity was done. And on the third day, the third activity. So you could see straight away. And then you could see now in the final column who was responsible for each activity. In this case, it was mostly the trainer. But in your organization, based on your project, the different activities, for instance, the person doing the planning may not be the person doing the purchasing. The person doing the purchasing might not be the person doing the installation. That person also may not be the same person who's in charge of running workshops and awareness and so forth. So over there in that column is where you're going to put the thing. And don't worry, I'm going to send this in PDF afterwards, so you could copy. Then you want the method of evaluation. This is where you're going to evaluate the success. I think also with this, I'm going to show a simple way that you could do it. You have to first put what it is that you are going to do in the first place. How long it's going to take. And also how much money is going to cost. And that is where you're now going to get an idea of how you're going to evaluate your project. Sometimes the proposer, the grant funders, then they actually tell you how they want it done. So they give you a form and say, this is how you're going to do it. We're going to go a little bit more into the evaluation afterwards. Let's go to the budget. You must look at the activities that you're going to do and the resources needed for each activity. Now, the resources would be in terms of the expertise that you have to pay for, and also the material and equipment and so forth that you have to get. Sometimes you actually have to rent premises to carry out some of your activities. All of that should be thought out, and you put them things together and you get costs. If you're going to go and include a cost beyond the funding period, it can be, let's say the proposal or the funder is offering just 40,000 US. And your entire project may cost 60,000 US. There are some agencies that want you to put all of that cost, the full 60,000, even though they know that they're only going to give you 40,000. Okay? What you now have to do is to let them know where you're going to get the extra 20,000. But there are some that require you to give them the entire cost of your big project, even though they're only giving you a portion of it. Okay? Most of the times, I recommend that you just do a specific project that falls within the threshold of the amount that the funder is giving. Let's say you got a big project that you have to do, let's say a greenhouse in 5 communities. Gonna cost you $60,000. But you have a funder giving $20,000. And greenhouses are one of the things they're funding. You can do your project and just limit it to the 2 areas. You don't have to always do, especially if it's a specific project. Okay? But if it's a project that includes things like Also, you're going to do solar panels in the 5 communities. Also, you're going to do water installation. Also, you're going to do backyard gardening and all those different things. You must now put all of those, but you let your funder know that you're only seeking funding for that section there that they're funding, which is the greenhouse. Okay? And you have these things already taken care of. Sometimes they just want to see the big picture of what their thing is. Right, so I just explained this here. This is why you said just the money that you're going to ask for is just for what the funder will support. For instance, I've had people who qualify to get solar panels on the install on the roof of the headquarters, the organization headquarters, the building. However, the roof of the building sometimes they'll be in disrepair, like need repairing to support even the weight of a solar panel. But there's the funder that give funding for the solar panel does not give funding for the repair of a roof. Okay? Now you have to show the funder for the solar panel that the funds that you're going to need to repair the roof or to put the roof in such a position that it could hold the solar panel, you're going to get it from X or Y or Z. Okay? Because here now, they may want to not give you the solar panel to put on a compromised roof. And that have been the case for a couple of persons, a couple of organizations I know, not just one. I actually saw one actually got the funding for the solar panels and the roof still needs repairing, but they got the funding still. And the solar panel is installed. Let's see. If you exceed the budget, the funder may not talk right. So you have to try to keep within their budget. Even when they ask for the entire project and you realize your entire project gone over, they think make sure you specify that is only this particular section which falls within their budget threshold that you're seeking funding for. So that's another thing that will get people kind of confused. And it's always good to get the contact numbers for the funders. So you could ask for clarification for certain things. Okay? You don't have to suffer in silence. You could always pick up the phone and call contact person to ask them what you mean by this. Because sometimes they give kind of conflicting information. Don't exceed the amount that we're asking for, but give us the value of your entire project. When your organization know that your entire project gone over the funding. So it's that little part where you need to specify that we're not asking funder A for the full 60,000. We're only asking for the 10,000 that they give, the maximum they give. And this is where it fits within our overall project. Okay? Because sometimes you have to do the 1-1 full basket approach. It doesn't make sense that you have a $60,000 project and you're there waiting for months, maybe years, for a particular funder to give you the full 60,000. There might be aspects of your overall project that small grants can fund. And it doesn't mean that you have to put down your entire project. You can do these smaller sections and get funding for them. It's just so that some funders don't want to see the overall thing. Right? That thing there that says don't budget items the funder won't support, it just means don't put in the section that you're asking them for items in your overall project that you know the funder not thing. You might do, let's say you're doing a whole community backyard agriculture thing, and one of the things you need to help your organization do this thing properly is maybe one of them small tractor and a pickup or something to help with transportation. However, you also need the different equipment implements and so tools and all them different things there. Seeds, all those stuff. The implements, the tools, the seeds might come up to $20,000. The tractor and the little plow come up to maybe 150,000. However, you have a funder that's giving grant up to $30,000 for farming implements and seeds and all them things there. It doesn't make sense to stop there and say you're waiting for the full thing. I want the funder to give me tractor and pickup also. Go for the funding for the seeds. And just don't put pickup in the part that you're asking them for. Just letting them know you're just asking for money for the seeds and the little farming tools. So that's how I'll explain that. All right. All right. They want to see that you have, when you look at the budget, so a lot of the time, because they're so experienced, and I've seen this a lot of cases, it does surprise me sometimes that with all the different technical things up front, like abstract statement of need, background information of your organization and the staff and so forth. Sometimes a man pick up your project and they go straight to the budget. And a lot of people get disqualified right there. Because there are times when them guys, if you don't do it, like call and get the prices of the resources and the prices of the experts to actually do things. These people who are charged with evaluating the proposal, they do it. You might just out of your head say, okay, I need a solar panel. The last time I hear solar panel selling for 10,000 US, let me put on 10,000 US. So things could happen, if you don't verify and get estimates and get, quotations. Two things could happen. One thing that could happen is that the price of the solar panel may have gone down to 5,000 US as they make improvement in these things. But you put down 10,000. Right away, you don't look a kind of way. These people are going to say, well, what this guy is going to do with the extra $5,000? I went and I checked. And based on the specs I see here, for the building they're going to put this on, this solar panel only costs 5,000. That's another thing you're going to do. You need to get your experts. Because if you're going to do things like solar panels and so forth, you must be able to get an electrician to let you know what grade of solar panels you need, how many of them you need to actually push the electricity requirement for your building or the different areas in your community you plan to distribute it to. Because the funders are going to have their people to check for that. And so sometimes what you put down there might be under budgeted or over budgeted. Okay? So sometimes the cost of what you put down there is not the real thing. They're going to back check. So you have to make sure that your budget reflects the price and the cost of the items and the services to actually complete the people's project. I remember they're seeing your project as their project because you're like an associate of them. You're like a tentacle of the organization. Now, once they give you the money, so they want to make sure that they don't look foolish when they report to whoever they get funding from. I think I just explained this. So you could either be too high or too low. Make sure that the different activities are accounted for. So some people don't realize that to put on a workshop, they just estimate in their head and say, oh, workshop, $5,000. When you look, the venue alone going with some of that money. Then you realize the person who's doing the presentation needs some money. You don't have no projector. You don't have no screen. Some people want transportation to get to the place. Some people not coming unless they have refreshment. You realize you try something without refreshment, only two people came. refreshment make a big difference. Okay. And so you have to put in the cost. There are some of the funders that realize that these things are missing and they're kind enough, but it's not all funders like this, kind enough to actually call you and tell you, listen, you're not putting in enough money for this activity. Have you considered this cost or that cost? And we've checked and we realize that this item costs more. And so whereas you put down 20,000, we are suggesting you put it up to 35,000. So I've had experiences like that, where the funder actually recommend that you add on several more $1,000 because they have a lot of experience with projects that were not properly budgeted in terms of the amount they put there to look to achieve the activities. And if the activity is not achieved, the objective is not achieved. And again, when it's too high, that's like a bigger red flag now because if it's too high and way too high, it might be a signal that you plan to shiver off some of the money. Okay. So it's good to have proper quotation and to look to see that every activity is properly funded. What's that? Okay. Remember I spoke about the in-kind? As much of that as you can get, please get it. If you look at the last section, you'll notice that there are a lot of funders that don't give 100% of the money that your project costs. They're looking for you to get some in-kind support, right? And there are various ways in which you could get it. You could get in-kind by people volunteering to do the services. You can get discounts from some of the material items that you're going to buy. You can get duty-free, okay? Those different areas. You could even get government support, especially if your project aligns with some of the objectives and policies that government trying to implement. Almost everything I mentioned as examples in this presentation are policies and objectives that government throughout the entire Caribbean region trying to achieve. Climate change is a big, big thing. And it's not just drought or coastal erosion, it's livelihoods also. So it's not just pure environmental. You need to put people in a position that they could cope with the changes. And so a lot of the policies that government trying to push now, plus government now trying to get this thing with the 17 sustainable goals and them things they implemented. So a lot of scope is there for you to align your projects with government objectives and policies. And so you could always get assistance. And whatever assistance you get, whether it's duty free, whether it's they're going to help in terms of giving you the venue for free, put down the cost of what it would have cost you if you had to pay for it, and that you're going to get your in kind. Right? It look like because I mentioned tractor and then things, the tractor is passing up. So mind the noise, yeah. All right. So we'll come to the end of that section, and just give me a little quick time here. I'm gonna do this, try to get this in 5 minutes so we could get some questions. Right. So you want to take some of these into consideration so you could actually get writing. Now, try to get to the point. This is not like this is like the opposite now of when you're writing your essay in school where the teacher wants you to put as much details as possible, but a lot of flowery words and descriptive words and so forth. Here now they want you to get to the point quickly. You got to be writing this thing like you're a scientist or a chef. You're just putting on the basic things in the recipe. You do not have to use the full page. Like some sections would say, they give you 2 pages to write the abstract. If it is when you have summarized the different points from the budget, from how you're going to evaluate, from the statement of needs and your approach and all them things there, to put in your abstract, and they're telling you got 2 pages to do it. It's not something compelling you to make sure 2 pages of work there. If you only take 1 page and it can fit, better for you. But believe it or not, a lot of the people reviewing these proposals that you guys send in, sometimes one man got 100 to read through. And most of them would gravitate to the one that got in less things to read. Now, less things to read should not mean that you left out critical things that the funder is asking for. Just mean that you don't have to get too verbal to make one point. Okay? The telling of the story comes in when you're trying to give them the reason why your project is one worthy of the funding. So sometimes, instead of just saying, the people in this community is suffering, you can give a little story without naming the individual, of course, of a particular family or individual or group of persons, the plight that they went through. I've seen funders, really put up as an example some of these stories that they got from proposals to even show the meaningfulness of their entire funding program. All right. So the next story, that is the poster story for UNESCO or Jeff or UNEP, whichever funding agency, might very well come from these islands, because the story is so touching. And never underestimate the story. It might be simple to you because you're in the community and you see it every day. But the old people used to got a saying that what's joke to man is death for crappo. It might be something so common to you that you're numb to it, but somebody else realized that your community is suffering like that. It would put them in shock and make them want to help right away. So don't trivialize anything. So a good story would help boost the importance of why your project should be funded. Also try to write it in such a way that your project is solving the problem or helping the funders' objective be achieved in your area. And then use a checklist. You have the different items that should be included in the different sections. Let's put up a little checklist to make sure that you have something on each part, and then you would be okay. So something now that was once abstract now becomes a bit more concrete. I've said a lot. And so now I'll pause here for question and answer. And if there's no question, I have a little bit more tips.
If I can ask something,
Yes.
Anne-Marie Joseph from St. Lucia. Once you've got all that data, it needs to go into a cupboard or some form of database. And I need some guidance as to what you can start doing to populate, to make sure you can manage all that data. Because the Gantt chart is one thing, but you got different sheets and different papers. So your expertise on the management software or paperwork, greatly appreciated.
Be more specific. You say once you get what data you're speaking about, you go and collect information from the community, you mean?
Well, we might be doing surveys. We have to collect a lot of this, CVs, staff members, all the stuff you've talked about. But you could end up with loads and loads of paper. There must be a management system or software or Gantt chart that can put everything together.
Well, you see, with the Gantt chart is looking for final decisions, you know. So you mentioned a couple of things there. The CVs and all those things, those are like profiles for the different members that you can have on your computer. You could have it digital. So you don't have to be like a physical paper, you know, and you store that in a file on your computer. Now, when they ask for these things, they go in the section they call the appendix. Okay? So you could send it to them digital. Like, so you have the different people in your organization, their profile, you have it digital. You would send it to them as an attachment digital. Maybe you put it in PDF so it's even lighter. And so it's not so much a problem. So that's dealing with the information you have on your organization, the staff that's there. And what you have to do is update also. There's sometimes when the time comes and a nice grant comes along that the organization will qualify for. And lo and behold, when they go and check, they have not updated. Sometimes even the current president, their name not on the documents that should have on the name. Like you would see the official document for the organization and the president from 5 years ago, name still on it. And that is needed to send up to the institution that's giving the money. So you have to update. So it's good to keep this information digital. In terms of the Gantt chart comes in that when you're looking at your project, you break your project down into different activities and you number them and you put when each is going to happen, how long each is going to happen for, and who's going to do what. So it's basically just final decisions going to go on that Gantt chart. If you do it digital, so I'll send you what I have here, the thing you could use the table function in Microsoft Word to create it, to suit you. It's just that the different sections must be there. Activities, duration, and who's gonna do what. And that would be enough. So
If you could send that, that'd be really useful as a base to
yeah, I'll do that. What I think, because of the time constraint too, and because I needed to go through all things, I'm also gonna actually send a completed one. So you could see how somebody write the different parts. Okay. A completed successful one that somebody got grant the funding for.
So, Mr.
Anyway,
Stapleton, oh, sorry, I was going to say we have two more questions
I
in
was
the
just
chat.
wondering if what I answered, if it clear up what she was asking in terms of storing the data. So all that thing that they ask for, sometimes yes, on paper it would be a lot, but a lot of the time they request it digital. That's good enough, St. Lucia? Is it still there? Okay.
Okay, so we have, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah.
So we have another question in the chat. So somebody was asking, I just lost the question. Okay, I'll just start from the bottom. Sorry, I lost the question. Apologies. Somebody who asked the very.
That's the one about another question is okay to approach a potential fund with a grant
there was one
proposal, for example,
before.
Pepsi?
There was a couple before, which I have.
Saying, are there any specific organizations
Yeah.
they may go to search for possible grant availability for their upcoming project? That's from
Yes.
Indira Freights.
Yeah. The person is asking if there are other. Well, one of the activities you can do, it's as simple as going into your preferred search engine. I prefer Google. You put in the area, your country. So first you need to know whether or not your country is one of the countries that the funder goes to. So you're going to put in grants, put a comma, and put your country. If it's Grenada, you put Grenada. And let's say you're looking for funding for, somebody was asking about recycling waste. So you're going to cover 3 items there. You want to know if there's funding available for your country. I know your country would be in this region here. and you want to know if funding is available for organization in your country for this specific thing. It could be recycling, it could be agriculture, it could be preserving records and all those kind of things. And then you will see a whole heap. Most of the time they will put, what I Google for is that they put the most relevant ones up first. All right. And you could choose now to see what their request for proposal look like, the form that you have to fill out, and also the deadline. Sometimes the deadline passed already, but they will tell you when the next cycle is, when they're accepting. And you could go through a number of them. The reason why I say put your country, if you don't put in your country, there are times when you'll see the grants are available, let's say for waste management or water recycling and so forth, in the Caribbean. It might be coming from CDB or some other thing. And when you look, you might think because your island or your country is within the Caribbean, that automatically you qualify. Lo and behold, now when you go into the list of islands in the Caribbean or countries in the Caribbean that they actually funding, your bubble get burst. I've had that happen a number of times. The grant process is easy, the funding is huge, and it's for the Caribbean. And it's for the exact purpose that the organization wanted for. And then when you go in, I'm in St. Kitts and Nevis. When I go in there, St. Kitts and Nevis is not a member. So now sometimes you got to be a signatory to some of these bodies. And so when they say Caribbean, they mean the countries in the Caribbean that are signatories to the organization. So you have to make sure your island or your country qualify. But luckily, there are a number of funders that have grant funding for all of the Caribbean islands. So you will find a funder if you do that search.
Okay, we have another question from Kimanero Julian. She is thanking you very much, but her question is, who must review the proposal before it is submitted?
Okay, so if you have your organization and you have the different members broken down, you must have one person who's going to be the person that's going to look over everything. So different people could be responsible for different sections of the proposal. Okay, somebody might be our team. I prefer a little team dealing with the budget. And again, even in that team, you could have one person who everybody going to give the information to compile. Somebody could be dealing with the coming up with the background and the historical information about the organization and coming up with the CVs and so forth. Make sure everything is up to date. Somebody else could be writing the statement of need to show these people that, hey, this project is justified. The people in this community really need this thing. And then the people, and in the activities section now, you know, you have a set of people, mostly maybe everybody and all, to come in here because the activities must match the objectives. Then the person now who oversees the whole thing could look through the entire thing with everybody. Then another step, and some funding agencies allow this. You can pre-submit your application and have an unofficial review. Somebody would review it and let you know whether or not everything is satisfactory or something is missing, something needs changing. This now requires you to do your proposal ahead of time. Sadly, though, that sometimes when fund requests for proposals come to the country, or you do find a funder, sometimes the deadline is 2 weeks away. So sometimes you don't have that luxury. But in terms of who would look it over, you have and you need to have somebody who was not involved in writing everything to look at that. Okay? You could also get somebody who had an organization that submitted already, submitted a proposal to the same organization. Okay? You also have on these websites successful proposals that put it right there. Everything inside there for you to read, to see what the people who got funding already, what they wrote. And you could see whether or not you're on target. So those are different options. But the best way is to pre-submit and let somebody in the funders organization look through. They do that from time to time. And sometimes you don't have to give them the full thing. As you complete one piece, you could send it in and get feedback right away. So help is out there.
Wonderful, thank you. And then we have another question from Josette Greaves. She's asking, do you know of any specific organizations that willingly funds women empowerment projects?
You mean like set up just for that? Or that's one of the things they fund?
Maybe that's one of the things that they fund, and that they're willing to fund women empowerment projects.
Most of the organizations that do that, it's just that yeah, they do have, I can't give you the name of some right now, but I know Jeff is one of them. It's the Global Environment Fund, but they're pushing female. When they say they want gender balance, they really want to see females involved in these projects. Okay? And so if you have, let's say, participation of just 2 males and 8 females, it's okay. But if you have participation of 8 males, but just 2 females, that's not okay. I think it's because historically females have been left out. And so there are organizations that may not be saying upfront that we are pushing women empowerment projects, but the nature of their requirement for their project, they're pushing women empowerment. And you could get funding from UNESCO, from JEP, UNDP, even the Caribbean Development Bank. There's a set of money there, but I think that one now you have to go through your state party. You will get it, but you have to go through your state party. There's some of these funders that you have to go through the government. The government sometimes that'll be slow in letting the population know that they could submit their funders. The next thing that the person asking the question can do is to actually put that down. Grants, comma, the country where you're from, and then women empowerment project, and see what comes up. And you will find a lot of and stuff. I'm seeing another one here. If you're based in St. Kitts and Nevis, before I read this though, was that sufficient of an answer for the person that asked the question?
Yes, please, it is. Thank you.
Okay, good. So this somebody's asking if you're based in St. Kitts and Nevis. Oh, it's not a question. You can look out for the next round of what's this?
Oh, that was me. I was just also letting the person know
Oh,
if they're based in St. Kitts and Nevis, they can look out for the next round of the WIFI project, which I can never remember the name, which I think is Women's Empowerment. I can't remember the exact acronym, but it's a Women's Empowerment Initiative, and they were recently had a call for grants for women's empowerment projects, and that was the first round, and I think they're going to have a second round, so you can look out for that.
That's why you have to go through the Department of Gender Affairs.
Yes, yeah, so it's that
Yeah.
collaboration between the Department of Gender Affairs.
And then what happens? Some people who, when they see that you got to go to the government department, they get turned off. But believe you me, that's one of the easiest way to get through, because sometimes the funding is there, and the department is looking for people to send in thing, and they do usually help you assist you in terms of preparing the proposal. So don't get turned off. A lot of the time, they already got the money. There's a project right now here in saying the money is there, but when I saw the deadline, I couldn't believe. I believe the deadline is next week. But there's a lot of funds available for a variety of projects. It's through a government department, and the fund is there, just that I think the deadline is too short, you know. That's the drawback of when it goes through the government department. When people know the organizations who need the funding become aware the deadline is right around the corner. And that is not thing that need changing. I think it need to be a shorter time between when the funding is available at the department or the request for proposals comes in from this donor agency and when the organization know. And they have to do it in such a way that they use different media. It's not everybody online. It's not everybody listening to radio. Not everybody reading the newspaper. So you have to cover all of them there. TV, radio, newspaper, media. Because a lot of lost opportunities. And what usually happens is when these agencies realize that the countries don't get a lot of responses, they cut the amount that they make available to the country in the next call for proposals.
Okay, so Imogen Howard has a question. If in
Yeah.
writing a grant, we want to double check it, are you available for that kind of service? If yes, how can you be contacted?
Yeah, I would do that. Let's see. Well, that's Ezra, that's you speaking?
Yes.
Yeah, you could share my information with the group here. That wouldn't be a problem because I did promise that even after this, because this is just an hour and a half exposure, so it's almost like a crash course. So I know afterwards, people will still need a little, somebody peeping over their shoulder to see that they're doing the right thing and to get them started too. So I don't mind. So as you could give them my contact, my email is my name at hotmail.com, Leonard Stapleton at hotmail.com. And yeah, so that wouldn't be a problem. Yeah, I know it is, as I was telling Abby earlier, that the writing process is more in this thing what the educators call the affective domain. It's not something you do often. We speak more than we write. So
Great. I think we have one more question because we're kind of a little slightly over time. So I think we could take one more question. And I think that question is going to be from Indira Freights. And she's asking, is it okay to approach a potential funder with a grant proposal? For example, Pepsi might not be offering any grant funding, but your organization sees the opportunity to recycle the bottles to make gutters that will aid in water harvesting. Can that organization approach Pepsi to fund this project?
yes, they can. As a matter of fact, before the request for grant proposals came on stream, where you had specific funding agencies actually requesting people to send in proposals. That what he's asking there regarding Pepsi is what used to happen. People used to actually seek a benefactor, somebody to support what they're doing. And they do up their proposal with the elements I just outlined there, with the abstract or the executive summary up front, because they appreciate that it's not everybody got time to read your entire proposal, but in the abstract, a summary of each element should be there at a glance, preferably on 1 page or a page and a half. Okay? So everything I just did here was just to give you what they mean by the executive summary and to have that up, preferably do it last so that you have a synopsis or summary. That's why they call it executive summary, a summary of each of the element up front. And people used to do that and approach different organizations that got money, right? And these organizations who have a what they call a civic or social duty. Some of them even have it enshrined now that a portion of their revenue would go back to the community. So even though they don't advertise that we have money to give, it's there. And sometimes even without somebody requesting funding, the company or people in the company might see your group doing something and say, hey, we are going to help these people. So yes, of course, you can go towards them with your proposal because they do have funding there, just that they don't advertise like a funding agency, but they have funding there for it. Even companies in your island, they do have it.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Mr. Stapleton. This is a very, very comprehensive, very informative session. So now that we're slightly over time, so we're going to wind down. So just to say that a couple of people are putting comments in the chat just to say thank you very much, that the session was very informative and relevant, and they appreciate your time and expertise. And we definitely appreciate your time and expertise. It was very comprehensive. And we appreciate all that you've shared today. You know, many of us don't have the experience of writing grant applications. It can feel very overwhelming. And so you've broken it down nicely for us, giving us an idea of what we need to include on our grant application. So we appreciate this very, very, very much. So just to say that what we'll do for everyone is that we will share the recording of this session, but Mr. Stapleton also delivered a presentation before a couple of months ago. So we will try and share, we'll also share that presentation with you all so that you could also access that information. If you do have any additional questions after today, feel free to email them to us. And then we will try and put those to Mr. Stapleton so that he can also address those questions. We will also share any resources or information that we think will be useful to you as well. And we'll also share Mr. Stapleton's email address as he's given permission for us to do that. So we'll also share that as well. So once again, thank you everyone for joining us tonight. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your interest. Thank you for your engagement and all your questions. We really appreciate it. And we just wish you all the best and have a great rest of the evening. We may have additional workshops, so you'd be very welcome to attend, and we'll keep you informed of those. Once you leave the meeting today, a survey will pop up. So if you don't mind, it will just take like 2 minutes, if that, just to fill in the survey, just to give us your view on the webinar and its impact, and also to give us an idea of what other topics you might want us to cover in future webinars. So whether that's grant related or whether that's just general topics related to managing an NGO, then we'll be happy to organize a webinar that covers those topics, because really what we're trying to do is build the capacity of non-government organizations and nonprofits, not just in St. Kitts and Nevis, but across the region. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining. Have a good evening.
Thanks, everyone.